gonna sit down and have a chat about enjoying the creative process. And while you would think as creative people, we're always having the time of our lives when we're engaged in our craft, there can actually be a lot of things that stand in the way of that. Whether you're comparing yourself to other people or you're too caught up in the end result, I have found that there are things that stand in my way, and I know I'm not the only one. I really have been finding myself craving that feeling of just creating for the sake of creating. So I have been implementing things in my daily life or my artistic process that have been really helping me, and I wanted to share them with you because I hope that they will also help you, and I genuinely want to help people also improve their creative practice. We get so much fulfillment out of being artists and creative people that when that starts to fade and we start to lose the joy in actually creating art, that's when we stop doing it. Specifically, I want to talk about removing friction from our daily lives and our artistic process. I also want to talk about some mindset shifts that I have been putting in place that have been really helping me with getting back to that ability to just immerse myself in the process. And lastly, I want to go over some healthy habits that you can put into place that will really help you enjoy your creative practice again because your mental health is improved in your everyday life. So let's start with removing friction from your creative practice and your everyday life. And the first thing that I want to talk about is just making your creative space more enjoyable to be in. I have put in a lot of work in my home studio to make it a more inviting space, whether that means just making it cozy or making it organized, just knowing where everything is and having everything have its place. That really helps me focus on the creative project that I'm doing rather than trying to find things or trying to figure out where things go when I'm cleaning up after a session of painting or something. When my space feels cluttered and disorganized, my brain feels cluttered and disorganized. So it's become really important to me to keep things tidy and also just take a few minutes before I dive in on a project to clean up if it is messy in here. Another thing that you can do to make your process a little bit more enjoyable or streamlined is changing your environment. And I think that this can go a long way. I think that if you have a craft that you can go do outside of your home or wherever you normally do it, you can get a different perspective and come up with different ideas and just get a fresh take on things. I honestly find that even if I don't paint somewhere else or don't draw somewhere like out in the woods or something, even if I just do something like going for a drive, I find that I get a lot of new ideas. Or just going and sitting somewhere and meditating outside or just being outdoors. Getting that change in environment makes a really big difference in my creative practice, and I think it can help a lot of people. You can also make adjustments to your process. If there are things that are not working for you or things that you're doing that are making it more difficult, just things that stand in your way of being your best creative self or your best artist that you can be, change those things. Just because you've seen somebody do something one way doesn't mean that that's the way that you should be doing it or the way you need to be doing it. It's okay to let go of things, and it's okay to not have your art studio look like that one that you saw on Pinterest if that organization method doesn't work for you. And it's okay to not set up your palette the way that that artist you saw on YouTube sets up their palette, because maybe that doesn't work for you. I feel like I do things in strange and different ways, but what I do works for me. And in future videos, I can share more about my unique process, but the general point of this is it's okay if those normal ways of doing things don't work for you. Next, we'll talk about some mindset shifts that you can use to just take some of the pressure out of your process and get back to just enjoying what you do and what your creative process is. The first thing that I think is super helpful is lowering the stakes. And what I mean by that is not every art project that you do needs to be your best work yet. And not everything that you write or not everything that you create needs to one up the thing that you did before it. Going into a project without some expectation that it's going to be this masterpiece gives you room to create in a different way or come up with different ideas or methods that you might not have done before if you're not comparing it to the last thing that you did. I think just going into it with a fresh perspective will help you create your best work yet without having that preconceived intention behind it. This also includes trying to detach from the end result. I think that going into an art project, we always have this thing in the back of our head of this is how this is going to turn out, or this is what the end result is going to be. And if it doesn't turn out exactly the way that you envisioned, sometimes we feel defeated about it. But honestly, if you can just go into it and know kind of what direction you want it to go in, but not have this exact image in your head, sometimes it will turn out better than you ever imagined that it could. We can also reframe failures to be more of a learning experience. So sometimes if a project doesn't turn out the way that we wanted it to, or we think that it didn't turn out right, we can see that as a failure. But there's always something that you can take away from those situations. And maybe it's even a change in your art style that you didn't expect or weren't prepared for, but in the end it ends up being really cool. I think that if we can reframe those failures as just ways that we're evolving as creatives, there's a lot that can be gained from that. And lastly, as far as mindset shifts goes, I think that getting comfortable with discomfort is a big way to grow as an artist or a creative or whatever it is that you're working on. Specifically, I mean just taking on things that you're interested in doing but maybe are a little bit out of your comfort zone. I think that's a major way that we can grow as creatives and just learn new things and explore different mediums and just gain new techniques that we wouldn't have had before. For me right now, that's creating videos. I'm trying to learn how to create videos that people can gain something from, that I enjoy making and that I'm proud of. And that has been a really rewarding process, but there's also been discomfort in that growth. But I'm embracing that discomfort because I know that it's something that I want to do and I want to learn how to do. The final part of this is developing those healthy habits to avoid burnout and just enjoy your process because your brain is feeling good and you're mentally feeling healthy. And the first thing is taking breaks. I think as artists, at least for me, I tend to get really absorbed in what I'm doing and I forget to stop to eat or just get some fresh air or look away from what I'm doing to get a fresh perspective. And when you do that, you not only are taking care of yourself, but you're also giving your art a chance to breathe and your project a chance to show you changes that you might not have seen if you were just staring at it for hours and hours. And the way that I implement this in a practical way is I will literally set a timer for myself for however long I want to work for. Usually it's an hour, and then I'll take a 10 or 15 or a 20-minute break and I'll eat something. I'll just go outside and get some fresh air, or I'll walk my dog or something like that. And doing that and then getting back into what I was working on, I almost always notice something that I want to change that I might have missed before if I hadn't taken a break. It's also important to create for yourself first. And even if you're working on a commission, it's important to be creating something that you want to work on. Our creative practice is something that we started in the first place because it was something that we wanted to do. And it's so important to not lose that when you're getting into working professionally as a creative. So just remembering to do projects that you want to do for you and not having everything be about what the audience is going to think of your work. This part is a really big deal, and I think that as creatives, if we want our career as a creative person to be sustainable, we have to make sure that we're doing personal projects and doing things that we're passionate about. You can also build a ritual around your creative practice. And for me, that looks like just getting in the mood. So I make myself a cup of tea or coffee, I light a candle, I put on some music, and that kind of gets me into the zone of being creative. And that can look different for a lot of different people, but if you just have something that gets you into that mindset, it can make a really big difference for how you are able to submerge yourself in the process and just stay engaged in it. I also think that it can really help our overall mental health when we're being creative and making art to try to embrace the imperfections, because they're always going to happen and it's unavoidable. So if you can change your mindset around something being imperfect to see it as just uniquely you, then that will help you with just your mental health around looking at your own art and appreciating it for what it is, because we tend to be so self-critical as creatives, and at the end of the day, what we made came from us. So embracing those things that didn't quite turn out right is really important. And lastly, I think this just speaks to our mental health in general, is to stop trying to be happy all the time. I think that people are just generally chasing this happiness that's off in the distance, that they're always trying to obtain, but always seems just a little bit out of reach. And we think one day we're going to get to this happiness that we perceive. And I think that if we can just accept the moment and be in the moment and be here and now, you can just release that thing of like chasing this obscure happiness that you think that you don't have yet. There is a lot to be said for just living in the moment, and I think doing that can really help our creative brains just let go of expectations and anticipation of what's coming next. It's very important to just learn to be in the moment as a creative person, because that's where you are when you're creating, and that's where you are in your everyday life. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and we can't control what happened yesterday. And so I think our creativity will really benefit from us just learning to appreciate the here and now. I really hope that these things resonated with you and that you found even one little nugget in here that you think will help your creative practice and help you just enjoy the process of being creative again, because that's why we all started doing this in the first place. And I would really love to hear from you in the comment section below. What did you take away from this video that you might be able to implement in your everyday life or your creative practice? Or what do you already do that helps you with this, that you have as like this essential part of your creative process that helps you just enjoy it rather than getting caught up in the end result or what other people are going to think? I really appreciate you joining me for this video and for doing something good for yourself and your creative practice. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.